Everyone. Good afternoon. So my name is Michelle. I'm joining from Amiskwichi, Waskayagan, Edmonton, Alberta, Treaty 6 territory. You are joining BC Can-Do's Links to Learning webinar this afternoon with our amazing presenters, Dale and Colleen. And today's topic is 13 things you should know for successful economic development. Really down to earth presentation. I listened to it this morning. I had some takeaways when I left the meeting. So I really think that you're going to be inspired. You'll have some things to think about. And some ideas and some tangible pieces that you can begin to implement wherever you are, whatever community you're part of or organization that you're working in. So really good presentation. Excited to hear these two again. So a couple of things. There will be opportunity for question and answers at the end. However, if you have any questions throughout, feel free to use that chat box and plug them in there, and I will definitely take note of them. There is a evaluation link that's going to be sent your way at the end. Feel free to fill that out, send it back to us, because your name will be entered in to win a door prize, which we will announce at the end of this week. And the door prizes are phenomenal. So it's your best interest to fill out that evaluation. Plus, we really love to hear your feedback, because these webinars are really put on for you and what is of interest to you, what speaks to you, what inspires and motivates you. So we love to hear from you. All right, so enough about that. Let's get right into our presenters. They are coming from BC. So Dale is the BC he is the CEO of the BC Economic Development Association. He and Colleen co-founded EDCD, which is Economic Development Community Development. They've been part of this game for, well, Dale 26 years, Colleen 24 years. So they have some really good experience, really good knowledge that they're going to impart with us this afternoon. So we welcome you to the floor. Thank you so much for lending your valuable time and your knowledge with us this afternoon.
Great, happy to do it. And there's that energy again. Like, wow. You just don't lose it from morning till afternoon. So that's good. That's good. Glad to be here this afternoon. So I'm the Dale of the Dale and Colleen duo here, and yeah, we're happy to do these Links to Learning events, Colleen. There's been a lot of them since, I guess, November, and this is a session we kind of really enjoy started talking about, because we're kind of passionate. I think, mixing that word knowledge and experience together on economic development is kind of scary, because I might be expecting of some knowledge coming from us, but at least we can talk about our experience. So good to be here. For those of you that are, well, everybody, I guess, is from BC that is joining us today, except for the folks from Can-Do. I was originally started off my economic development career in Lillooet, and then from there I moved to Chilliwack in 2000. I did in Lillooet for 10 years, and I was born and raised in Lillooet, actually. And then I went to Chilliwack, and today I'm actually talking from the traditional territories of the Okanagan First Nations, as I'm in Penticton today. So, Colleen, over to you.
Right, I'm just up the road from you, Dale, in West Kelowna here, and yeah, we do like giving this webinar, this presentation. Of course, it has been a webinar in the last year. Normally, we do go into communities and get a nice face-to-face and chat going, but this works too, and we're all changing and adapting to that. But we like to keep things fairly simple and straightforward when we go through these things. We've both been in economic development, as Michelle said, for quite a number of years now, and our experience has really shown that economic development does not have to be complicated. It's some pretty simple stuff, some foundational pieces that need to be worked on and developed, and that's really successful economic development is really the simple stuff and the basics. And that's kind of what we're going to go through here today.
Great. So yeah, so the BC Economic Development Association is like a can-do organization. We're just British Columbia. We host an annual economic summit. We host a variety of courses. So we're pretty much membership driven. We have a board of directors, and on our board of directors, we have representatives from the different economic regions around the province. And as a matter of fact, Trevor Coots from Hawaii First Nations is, I won't say what position he is, but he's a director on our board. There's some news coming on that shortly. And then also we have our newest member of the board is Rocio from Stolo First Nation, Stolo Community Futures, located in Silhouette. So we're happy to welcome them to the association. And then, and for those of you that don't know, we also host the BC Economic Summit. We hosted March 8th to the 11th, and this year, of course, it's virtual. Wanted to let you know, even though I'm maybe cheating doing this, but we have a number of scholarships available for Indigenous communities to attend that summit at no charge. And as well, we provide you with a complimentary 2021 membership as well. So we're happy to have you. And over to you, Colleen. Talk about who you are.
Yeah, we'll just take a quick minute here just to talk about EDCD and sort of say why we are here and our experience and why we think we have some things to say and to share today. So Dale and I started this, we're in our 14th year now, so we've been going pretty good, actually, Dale. We're pretty proud of that, 14 years now. Yeah. And we really focus on smaller rural communities to help them reach their economic development goals, help them with their projects and initiatives and get things done. We've been able to go across Canada and to the US and globally as well, doing economic development, some of it training, some of it disaster recovery. And unfortunately, one of the avenues of our work that is growing is economic disaster recovery. And I say unfortunate is because we go into communities after a disaster has been experienced there, and we try to identify different initiatives and strategies that they can put into place to help recover first their economy to recover as quickly as possible. And we would really love to be engaging with these communities in a proactive basis with the development of pre-disaster plans. But unfortunately, we haven't reached that yet. And I think we probably are closer than we ever have been, Dale, with regards to people and communities thinking about pre-disaster planning with COVID, because this is a disaster that's affected every single community in the world. It's a global pandemic, and I think that has opened up eyes in communities that thought, nothing's going to happen here. We're good. Those floods happen somewhere else, or typhoons. They're somewhere else. But COVID has been a great equalizer that way, and so anyways, that's just one thing that we're unfortunately focusing on more and more and more.
We sure are. So today we wanted to talk about the 13 things that you really need to know for successful economic development. And when you talk economic development, you typically are talking about, people are thinking in many ways about, business attraction or bringing new things to our community. And that isn't necessarily the case anymore. And we kind of want to talk about some of those things as we go through the presentation. It's really both community development and economic development. When we talk economic development, we're talking sort of in that broader context. We're talking about how it is community and how it is business. It is all in one. And we can no longer have that separation. We can't have a separation between community development and economic development. It really is one thing, and we're working on things in our communities through the Economic Development Offices, many things that we have never done before in traditional economic development, but we're working on building cultural events, cultural buildings, incorporating the culture into what we do, improving the quality of life of our communities, working on projects that will create jobs or to support entrepreneurs, or doing those other things that make that create that place where we are, the place where we want to be, and the place where we want people to be and the people to come. And again, it isn't just about buildings; it's about people as well. And Colleen?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen such a change over the years that we've been in economic development, Dale. You know, when we first started, community development and economic development were two separate thoughts and paths, right? And it really has changed, and it took some time, but once it started to change and evolve, I think it went actually quite quickly. But you know, it started with things like economic development, getting into and more into workforce and making sure that there was a available workforce and a trained and a skilled workforce. That was sort of one of the first things I think that we, as economic development way back when, didn't really do too much. We just left it to those agencies that look after labor force. But we soon realized there is a role for us to play as economic developers. And then, you know, since then it's gotten into, you know, a lot more things that are so important to our communities and to our quality of life. And, you know, that includes things like affordable housing, and it includes, you know, things like poverty reduction. It includes food security, all of these things that, again, you and I really didn't do much work at or on in our early days of economic development. And now I think we're starting to be hard pressed to find an economic developer who isn't involved in some ways in all of these sort of aspects. And I think that's a really good thing, because we're all working towards the same thing, right? We're all working towards ensuring that the quality of life for our citizens is the best that it can be. And where those gaps exist and where people may be falling through the cracks, what is it that we can do to lift that up and to improve it?
And then, of course, you know, one of the things that we constantly find, and you know, Colleen was talking about a lot of the great work that are happening in our communities and how involved we're getting. But the thing is, that what we don't do is we don't always talk about that at the local level. We don't necessarily engage with our local leaders, with our community, and that's something that we really need to do a lot more of. We really need to reach out to those folks and let them know what we do. But at the same time, community leaders, community stakeholders, and partners need to reach into the economic development functions and find out what it is that they're working on. What are they doing? What kind of activities are, you know, the investments that are being made? What kind of activities are they focusing on, and how can they maybe get involved? But far too often we see, when we go into communities, that there's that, you know, as much as it shouldn't be a separation, it is a separation, and we need to overcome that in order to make sure that we're all going in the same direction, rather than our economic development going in one direction and our planning departments going in another direction, and, you know, some other, you know, a development corporation going in another direction. We need to combine all of those activities and create it as to one program and know what each other's doing.
Mm-hmm. And there's lots of really easy ways, I think, that as economic development staff, you can communicate out what you are doing. You know, simple things. When I was economic development in the central Okanagan here, we were responsible for the surrounding communities within the regional district here. And we went out and every year, if not more often, but at least annually, we went out and met with the different councils, you know, the council in the district of Peachland, the council at the West Bank First Nation, or council up in Lake Country, that sort of thing. And we took the time to tell them what we were doing and why we were doing it, and the importance it was, not just for the community that they're living in, but the regional area as well, and even a bit broader if sometimes. We develop newsletters, and I know the West Bank First Nations here has a monthly newsletter that they send out electronically, and it's a great piece of information that really tells me what they're doing, what sort of developments are upcoming. They highlight different businesses, so I get a real idea of what they're working on with regards to economic development and how that's impacting where I live every single day. And it's just it's a nice, easy way to do it, and it helps to get that support and that broader support from the community so that you can continue to do economic development and successfully do it years ahead.
Yeah, and Colleen, I think on your economic development board that you had in the Okanagan, you had West Bank First Nations, I believe, as a member of your board, did you not?
Yes, we did. Yeah. They were one of the communities in our region, so they definitely had a seat at the table. Absolutely.
So again, they're knowing what you're doing as a sort of a regional organization, if you will, but you're also aware of what they're doing. So it sort of goes both ways. I know when I was in Lillooet and even in Chilliwack, in Lillooet, we had the Stotlium Nation as part of and so we would have their staff come to our committees, and as committees, as the economic developers, we would go to each other's offices and talk about what we were doing and identify partnerships. And the same thing with the Stolo Nation. I think of some of the early successes that we had in Chilliwack in the year 2000, early 2000s. We could never have accomplished it if it hadn't have been our partnerships with Stolo Nation. But again, it was because we were letting them know what we were doing, and they were part of what we were doing, and then we were doing what we could to complement their program. So it was all about that cooperative nature of staff to staff, staff to board, and staff to even community, if you will. Colleen.
Yeah, we want you to have, as one of the 13 things to be successful in economic development, we want you to have a plan in place. And we're talking about an economic development strategy or economic development plan. And that's all about, identifying what are those goals and what are those projects and programs that you need to implement to reach those goals and to be what you envision your community to be. And how you get to that vision of what you want your community to be is to talk with your community stakeholders, to talk with your residents, to include all of their input and their views on how they want and what they want your community to look like and to feel like as we move ahead into the coming years. And you can't do a successful economic development program, and you can't do a successful economic development strategy without some comprehensive input from community members.
Exactly. And I think, when you talk about community members, Colleen, I think we're talking about our elders, we're talking about the youth, we're talking about the businesses and maybe, and other people that make up the community. And I think I was talking this morning, Colleen, about how the Tsawwassen First Nations, one of the things in working with them, I really was so impressed with when they were doing their planning as to what they wanted their community to look like. They literally took the show on the road. I mean, they wanted to engage. They wanted to talk about what it is they wanted as a community for now and for the future. And I can remember they not only did their engagement in Tsawwassen itself, they went out to like the Okanagan, where there was clusters of their members to meet with, to get their input, as they wanted a community that people, if they weren't there, wanted to come back to, but at the same time building for today and for the future. You need to be realistic about your readiness. And, you talk about the development of an economic development strategy, Colleen, and that's one piece of that readiness assessment. And so many times as communities, we have a tendency to think that we are ready for visitors. We are ready for people to come and build, or we are ready for people to come here and do business, or we're ready for our community members to have the jobs, and we've provided training or opportunities for training, or we've provided opportunities for new developments to happen. But are we really ready in that sense when we're trying to attract those people. And the likelihood is we're not ready. And you need to be realistic about that. Don't think you're everything until you've really gone through and marked off those things that and checked off those things from the check boxes that are really, really critical to encourage economic activity on your community. That can be in the way of new tourism developments or new residential developments or new industrial developments or any type of development that you want. Are you really ready for that kind of thing to happen and to come into our community? And if you're not, just take the steps to get ready for the future, but don't hide the fact that maybe you're not quite ready yet for that type of thing to happen. Colleen?
Yeah, and you know, we have a self-assessment that we're happy to share. It's actually available right off the homepage of our website, and it's an assessment, a self-assessment that you take, and you do go through these check boxes, just as Dale mentioned, on different, you know, categories or items that really need to be thought of to be investment ready and community ready for economic development. And we talk about things like your economic development capacity and you know, what type of economic development items do you have in your toolbox? How do you market your community? Whether that's to an internal audience or an external audience. You know, what's the land and land use and those policies? What are those like? You know, how do you talk to and how do you deal with an inquiry that your community might get? And again, that can be an internal inquiry or an external inquiry. So all of these things you have to really, really look at and see where you are. You know, do you have these things in place, or maybe you're working on them, or maybe you've never thought about them. And this self-assessment that we have available, we really do encourage you to download it and just take a few minutes, maybe a bit longer, but you know, take some time and really go through each of those questions and do the tick on the, you know, the yes, no, maybe so kind of check boxes that we have there. We've made it as simple as we possibly can. And if you are able to take the time to do that, it's not something we would say just do it alone. You know, get some other community members as well to sit around, because, you know, as individuals, we don't know everything, and maybe something that has to do with your land use. Maybe you don't know exactly what's happening, but you know, somebody else at the table will know what's going on with that sort of thing. So what would also encourage you to do is Dale and I've worked with quite a number of communities on you know, whether on their investment readiness and the assessment on how ready their community is. And I will tell you, less than 20% of the communities that we've worked with are actually ready for investment, even though the majority of them thought they were. But when you go through the assessment, if you get, and I don't really want to say a fail, but let's just say you don't have that mark that says you're investment ready, don't take that as a fail. Don't take that as a like, oh my God, we have too much to do. Oh, you know, we'll never get there. Just take a look, you know, piece by piece, and look at these as opportunities. Look at these as identifying those gaps that you can fill so that you can become investment ready, or you can become a community that's ready for economic development activity. And really, you know, for communities that are smaller and perhaps don't have, you know, a really strong or full economic development capacity, this is a great way to start to develop a strategy. You know, so maybe you can't afford to do an economic development strategy because you just don't have the capacity, and whether that's financial or human. This is a great piece that lets you, as I said, highlight those gaps or identify those gaps and build some strategies around that, and then just start the momentum of building your program together.
Exactly. Yeah, and it really does go a long ways. You know, assessing your readiness, Colleen, it goes a long ways even towards developing that strategy that we talked about previously, right? Like, so many of these pieces can fit into that strategy to help you work towards that stage of readiness. And in many ways, that should be even part of your early part of your strategy as far as your work plan goes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, understanding your local and regional assets. And we have a tendency, and we all do it, we have a tendency to look at what we have within our own community and go, we don't have this. We don't have, we don't have that grocery store, or we don't have an airport, or we don't have but maybe just outside of the community's boundaries, these things are there, and we need to look at those things as our assets, and not be, especially if you're going out and you're trying to approach other people to come and invest in a community. You don't want to be talking about the things you don't have. You want to be talking about the things you do have, and those things that you do have that are regionally are also yours. So that Kelowna Airport is really the West Bank First Nations airport as well. It doesn't have to be, it's not necessarily within their boundaries of the communities, but it's part of the region, it's part of the area. Same with, when I was in Chilliwack, we used to say we had 3 international airports within a 45-minute drive. And of course, we always counted Bellingham Airport as one of our airports. So, we kind of cheated in some ways, but the fact is you have to, you want to talk about those things that are outside of your community as being your assets, and not just focus on the ones that are inside your community.
Yeah, exactly. And it, it goes past just those harder assets, right? So the airports and the hospitals and things like that. And it moves into the people as well, your labor force. When I was with the Economic Development Commission here in the Central Okanagan, one of the things that we knew is, and it's still true today, a lot of development, particularly for the west side of Kelowna, was going to happen on West Bank First Nations land. In fact, they just presented a report to the Regional District Board in the last week or so, showing that 86% of commercial development is going to happen on their land. That's a huge amount. But it was true in the days when I was working in economic development. But at the time, the West Bank First Nations really didn't have a strong economic development capacity. So, we realized each other's assets in that way, and we partnered on a lot of different initiatives. And one of them was taking them down, and ourselves down, and other partners down, to Whistler-Dale. If you remember, that show was very popular, the ICSC show. Yeah, which is the International Council of Shopping Centers. And it's not just big shopping centers, it's a bunch of franchise, smaller, shops and that sort of thing. But they're looking in one place, it's a big trade show that's looking for locations for them to build new opportunities and new development. And it was such a great partnership. We're going to talk about partnerships, but it was a great partnership between us and West Bank First Nations, because they realized what the assets we could bring to that show with them, and we realized the assets that they had that we could market at the show. So it's really important when you look at assets to look beyond just your own boundaries, and you'll be amazed at how many assets you have, not only within your boundaries, but expanding out. It just explodes.
And another really good example, and you got me thinking when you were talking there, Colleen, is when you think of it the other way around, a Suyas, for an example, and with what, that you've been in the Okanagan a lot longer than I have, and a lot closer to retirement than me. But the Suyas, the town of Suyas itself, really when you think about its growth and the things that happened there, what kick-started that? It was the wineries and the development of the Nikomek or the Spirit Ridge resort by the Suyas Indian Band. And so when you think of how both the town of Suyas itself, it grew because of the regional assets. It didn't grow because of what Suyas did itself.
There's a saying that you honor your past by investing in your future.
Working together gets the goals that we need to get better and faster.
It's been a big step towards more acceptance on all sides.
We're trying to change a paradigm here.
First Nations municipal collaboration is important for a few reasons. If communities collaborate, they're planning together, they're developing local economic development plans or environmental sustainability plans. We're all living in the same country, and collaborating at a community level is so important for understanding each other, for living together.
The core of our partnership has got to be communication. We shared the same schools, the same playgrounds, hockey rinks. We knew one another, but our elected officials didn't have a venue where they could communicate regularly. But now with the SETI program, we meet at least once a month, whether it's police and fire services, healthcare, education, public works. The foundation that we've created is just a strong network of communication now between EDOs, councillors, mayors and chiefs, and even the citizens in all three communities.
On a formé un partenariat entre les deux communautés non autochtones, une communauté autochtone, puis qu'est-ce qu'on a fait? On avait une vision ensemble. On a mis un focus juste sur le tourisme. So, si on n'avait pas d'autres partenaires, ça ne marcherait pas.
It's moved us forward, getting to know each other, getting to know the history. It helped to facilitate. It helped to get the parties all in the same room, in the same place, got them talking, looking for projects that they could do together.
Our people are Muskegsuck first, Enoch Cree Nation members first, but we also still feel that as though we're Edmontonians. The MOU and the partnership just gives us more ownership together in a mutually beneficial way.
We've been neighbors with Enoch First Nation for more than a century, and yet it's only in the last few years that we've started to act like neighbors. I think the most important thing about the work that we did was we built relationships, and we built friendships, and we built trust.
You know, our teams do work together, and I like the exposure they get at the municipal level at those tables for development. This gives investors a lot of certainty and a lot of comfort knowing that we can build relationships with other jurisdictions.
Collaboration between municipalities and First Nations is extremely important. We need to focus on helping our communities advance their own agenda in terms of employing our people, getting them training, and doing other wonderful things around community development. We've entered into a period of reconciliation as Canadians. We want a better outcome. And it's not for me personally, it's for our children. To me, that's what Canada's all about.
This program is so important. I really hope that it's still around with CANDO and the federal government and FCM and the partnership with FCM. And I know there's a similar type of program offered in British Columbia by the province of British Columbia and UBCM to be able to encourage those partnerships between local governments and Indigenous communities. And I think, you know, going forward, I mean, this is what we need to be doing. We need to be forging those relationships and forging those partnerships to encourage joint economic development initiatives, and, you know, just focusing on the economic development side of things. You know, I think there's some incredible opportunities, but we're going to do that by working together. And we've been working with, and encouraging a number of communities to reach out and have those relationships. And I know that CANDO has some significant resources that they've developed over the years as part of the SETI program that I believe can be shared with the communities. And I hate to speak for them, and hopefully they'll correct me if I'm wrong, but these resources are available and they should be used to, what can we do to develop those effective working relationships together, but not only focus on those partnerships with local government, talk about, look at partnerships with other agencies that are in the communities, other organizations that are in the communities, be it, maybe even chambers or community futures organizations, but also those business to business relationships. And Colleen, I think you wanted to talk about that business to business relationship.
Yeah, exactly. So much can be done when businesses work together, and this is a really good story, and it's something that's come out of COVID, and so many good opportunities have come out of COVID, as much as it's been a disaster in so many of our communities, and unfortunately we've lost far too many lives. But a nice positive story here for somebody who wants to do something for the community. It's a company in the Frog Lake Cree Nation, which is outside of Edmonton, And the gentleman's name is Jacob Faithful, and he had a company, an existing company that was in the janitorial service and sanitation, that sort of thing. And COVID hit, and he was finding that a lot of his existing customers, plus just his community members, et cetera, were coming to him and saying, you know, we need more for us to come back from COVID, and we need the hand sanitizers, we need the antibacterial wipes, we need masks, we need all of these things. And he struggled a lot to see how he, to what he could find and what he could do personally to answer these inquiries. And he did a lot of research and found that, like many communities, there was a big struggle for getting masks and the PPE and all of that sort of stuff. And what he found was talking to the different competitors of his is the willingness to partner or to collaborate with them and find an answer. And he actually found a company called Viral Clean. It's out of Ottawa. It's a non-Indigenous company, but they were making masks, and they are making masks. And they said to Jacob that, you know what, we will help you make masks at your facility in Frog Lake and for your community and beyond. And all he was thinking about, first of all, was to make these masks for his own community and then reach out regionally, et cetera, et cetera. So he formed a partnership with the CAO at the company down in Ottawa, and they were able to walk him through the whole process of give him basically a roadmap to, find your suppliers, find your customer base. They're going to provide the training to his staff so that they know how to properly make these masks. They've ordered the equipment. It had to come in from Europe, and it has arrived in Canada, and it's going to be up at his facility in Frog Lake, as I said, in sometime this week, I believe. And he thinks first production will be February 22nd. The Ottawa company is coming at the same time. They're going to have 3 of their sort of specialists to provide the training to his staff. He'll be able to hire more people. And it's just such a good story of the partnership that worked and what he really wanted to do for his community and beyond. And it's it's the first 100% Indigenous owned and operated company of its kind in Canada. So a great story for them.
Great example, yes. The having your foundational pieces in place, and it's so important. It's so easy too, Colleen, to create. In the past when we first got into this, and we would prepare profiles of the regions that we were in, and we would print these huge documents. And whenever somebody would inquire about our communities, we would run one of those off and bind it up and then mail it out and run to the post office and mail it out. And 2 weeks later they'd get it in the mail, and then maybe they'd read it and then they would phone us. Now you develop a profile, and somebody searches the words they're looking for to find it in the profile, but it's so much easier to produce and cheaper to produce, and every community needs to have one. Tell the story of your community. Talk about where it wants to go in the future and the planning and the plans you have in place. Talk about the regional assets that you have, and do everything you can to have those that type of information readily available. And when you look at you look at a number of the communities and having websites and having economic development portions on their websites so that people can find, not only outsiders, but even locals and local businesses can find out about what are the opportunities, where's the support, that type of information. And you look at even like Hawaiian First Nations, and the use of their Facebook page and other uses of social media to talk about what is going on in their communities now and down the road. And we're using what we call foundational pieces a lot during COVID, because a lot of our information is coming out through social media and through Facebook and through, blogs or posts on our website, educating the people about what steps we're taking to deal with the pandemic. Anything to add to that, Colleen?
Yeah, just a couple quick little tips on websites for economic development and different communities is, we would always say to have a contact the contact information on the page, and we say every single page so that people don't have to click back and scroll down or whatever. Make it really front and center so that individuals, again, like Dale says, whether it's an internal or external inquiry, they know how to contact you, and it's easy for them. We're pretty lazy. We don't like to click more than once or twice as we go through information that we're searching for. And the other really quick one that I would say with regards to websites, particularly on your home page, your landing page for economic development, make sure that you have a map giving some context as to where you are. So for instance, here in the central Okanagan, we would say, here's, the biggest community is the city of Kelowna, obviously, but we'd also give context to Vancouver. For sure. Would give context to Seattle, would give context to those bigger, larger cities so that people do then kind of go, oh, okay, I know where you are. Because again, not only are we lazy, we're kind of dumb in a lot of ways with where places are. And we kind of think maybe we know where they are. But if you just supply that map, you can clearly demonstrate to where you are. And again, Dale, it gets back to some of these other things we're talking about. If I'm here in Kelowna and I show how close I am to Vancouver, well, that's an asset. In some ways, even though it's a 4-hour drive, it sure opens up a consumer market that they may not have thought of, not knowing where my community was.
Exactly, yeah. And then, of course, engaging with your local businesses. If you have businesses in your community, it's important to engage with them and not just say, okay, they're open, we move on to the next one. And we need to, and I think it's really become, increasingly evident in our communities that with COVID, that we need to be talking to our existing businesses. We need to be determining what some of those impacts are. Where can we help those businesses to make sure that they're sustainable, to make sure that they're thriving and being able to, hire staff and keep staff employed and expand their possibilities and, maybe help them diversify their product mix. Or pivot to online sales. You probably have the number of businesses even working out of your homes. And I know that, we see that all the time, anywhere we've been, that there's those home-based businesses. What are they doing? How are they doing? How are they pivoting? What kind of assistance can you be providing them? Because maybe they can expand in the future too, but we need to be working with them to help them in their, but we never know what their challenges might be, what their opportunities might be if we don't engage with them. And so we need to really be reaching out and doing what we can to get a better understanding of our business community. Really?
Yeah, and we want to make sure, like you said, Dale, include all of your businesses, and some communities will say to us, well, we don't have very many businesses, so it probably isn't important for us. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have a handful of businesses or you have hundreds of businesses or thousands. It really is important to talk with your businesses. The example I brought up about the fellow who's on the Frog Lake Cree Nation who's just doing the masks. Now that's a different type of product that he's now offering. It would be really important as economic development to go and meet with him after he's had maybe a month to say, how is it going? How can we help? What are some of these challenges? Maybe, 6 months from now, is there labor? Is there, is this working how he needs to work? Or is there suppliers that we could link him with? So there's so many different valuable pieces of information you can get from your existing businesses, but you do have to talk to them.
And again, I like what you said about including all your businesses, but you need to know who all your businesses are as well. And this is why, when I think of going and working in Alberta after the 2013 floods that are coming in and talking with the Siksika First Nations, and they, knew they had a large number of businesses that they worked out of their homes. And then, of course, so many of the homes were devastated with this flooding. And they didn't know where all of them were, and they didn't know necessarily how to get a hold of them or what type of businesses they were running, and they wish they'd had an inventory ahead of time. And so it's really important to know exactly sort of what's going on, in your communities. And when we talk about people working from home, it can be contractors, it can be, truck drivers, it can be whatever that are independent contractors. These are businesses that are still working in your community. Colleen?
Yeah, and entrepreneurship is a huge factor in economic development and strengthening your community, and being able to ensure that you've got that entrepreneurial sort of spirit and policies in place and the support to make sure that you know that whether it's youth or anybody else that's starting a business or a new enterprise is going to be supported and is going to be welcomed in your community. Here are three really great examples that started different ways. The first one picture on the left is Niche Gear, and it's a sports clothing line. And I know the owner there, the fellow who started up Kendall Netmark, he I know has been a speaker on Can-Do's some of their webinars here. But he started as a student at the University of Saskatchewan, I believe, and he entered two different business competitions without really having any experience in doing business, but entered them with his idea, and he won both of them. So he took the prize money from both of those contests and funneled it into his business, and operated his business out of his apartment, I believe, until he was graduated, and was able to focus full time now on growing that business. And today, Niche Gear it's sold, throughout North America, and he's got a great story. So if you haven't heard his story, it's absolutely a wonderful story and very heartwarming of why he gives a percentage of his profits going to participation in sports for underprivileged youth. And as I said, I would encourage you to listen to what his full story is. The one in the middle there is Kakuli Cafe, and lots of lessons there. It was an individual here, Sharon, who just started with a pop-up shop outside a car wash here in the Okanagan, selling organic and then going to other little places. And she did that for about 3 years and dreamed to open up her own cafe or restaurant. And she was able to do that. It's been well over 10 years now, I think, that she's had Kakuli Cafe, and in a couple of different locations as well. And she also opened up a new location in Merritt, which she actually sold to an employee through the Futurepreneur program. And Futurepreneur has great programs to help entrepreneurs start their businesses and walk them through it. They've got funding for it as well. They've got great templates on their website, and certainly would encourage folks who are looking to start a business to check out Futurepreneur. It's a really good one. And then Spirit Bears is another one. It was Canada's first Indigenous owned and operated coffee company, and they're really good about seeking different partnerships and how they can get their product into as many markets as they can, whether that's more locally or across the world. I think they deal with the official coffee supplier of the Swiss Chamber of Commerce. Like, who would have thought, right? So really cool stories on all of these, and these are just three that we can talk about in the time that we have.
Sorry, I wasn't talking. I was talking, but I wasn't there. Colleen, I really like that video because I think it really says a lot about that, about the Mistassini and region. And as a tourist that's never been there, I'd want to go see that. To me, it's just stunning. And then, but when you look at that video, it wasn't actually done for tourists. It was done for locals to really, I think, respect the assets that they have, but to encourage them to help be part of the story, to help tell the story of the land and of the area, and find out how they can get involved in that. And I think of I think of how many tourism assets we all have in our communities, and we sometimes take them for granted. I mean, we drive by it every day, or we see it every day, and we don't really think of the beauty that's out there in front of us because maybe we see it every day. But it's for those people that are on the outside, is how do we want them to see our communities? How do we want them to experience it? And so you need to use those tourism assets to your advantage. And when you're doing that, you're encouraging people to also respect the value of that land that they're seeing, but also respect there's an area maybe they'll live, maybe they'll want to invest, maybe they'll want to be part of. And so we need to cross-reference everything we do in tourism towards those other aspects of economic development that we want to pursue in our communities. And we always look at things like, for an example, the lodge here, this is the one just outside of Salmon Arm. Why can't I think of its name, Colleen? But what is it?
No, you just said, what is it? You made me forget it again.
But it's a beautiful, stunning place, and the golf course and the restaurant. Oh my gosh, it's just incredible food. And we stayed here a couple of times since we've been up in the area doing workshops, and it can be used as that opportunity to promote the area for other types of investments, and using that hotel room to talk about the community as a whole, or talk about maybe some investment opportunities that are in the area, instead of just using it as a bed, as a place for somebody to sleep. Use it as an opportunity to sell your community and to sell the opportunities that might be available.
Yeah, and just going really back super quickly to that video, I think it's just such a good best practice that any community could really do, right? They had just done a 5-year ecotourism plan, and they knew that they needed to have their business, the tourism businesses to provide a customer service that would bring visitors back. And they also knew they had lots of experienced guides in there and other folks that could provide a tourism experience, but had no idea how to run a business. So they invited all of these people, whether you were an existing business or whether you just wanted to look at the opportunity in tourism for starting a business because you had that experience in some way, to an evening, and talked about what their plan was and how they wanted to make sure that their community was ready for visitors and would provide that high level of customer service. So businesses were offered the one-on-one opportunity to sit down and meet with tourism professional experts and help them through their business plan, help them understand how to do customer experience at a different level than perhaps was being offered at the time. And I think it's just and this was all free for the businesses to do it. And I think it's just a great best practice that any community could adopt. It is a couple of years old, but it doesn't matter. I think somebody could do it today.
So too, it's so easy to forget those things that we do and think if they're not big, it's not worthy of a celebration, and that's so wrong in economic development. I mean, sometimes those little things can lead to big things, and we need to celebrate those small things. We need to let people know that we've done something and what we've done and the impact that could have in the longer term. And again, it may be just it may be the development of that community website, or it may be the development of a new tourism initiative. We need to celebrate that as if it's the ultimate success. We need to bring the community together and let people know exactly what we're doing.
Right, and it really just goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, right? Let them know, let your community know what you're up to and what you're doing, and that's an easy way to do it, right? Is to go out there and celebrate those small wins and let them know that these are the things we have impact on. Because if we don't tell them, nobody is, and they don't think you're doing anything a lot of times.
Exactly. Colleen, next slide.
Yeah, well, I'll start to quickly wrap up here as I'm looking at the time, but, make sure that you measure your success and we're looking at things like, if you're developing your economic development strategy or your plan, make sure you put in some performance measures there, right? So you can gauge what's working, what isn't working, what's successful. And you know what, if things aren't working, it doesn't mean it's a failure, just like, a self-assessment on readiness isn't necessarily a failure, but find out why it didn't work. Right? I mean, the failure is you just letting it go and not figuring out why. So put those measurements in to see, what is working, what isn't working, and it gives that accountability back. And it also, again, gives you more to communicate out to your community, to build that support for what you do every day. And that's so important to make sure that, you're accountable, transparent, and you get support.
And then, of course, that making resiliency to recovery the new norm, for the last 12 months, we've been, or 12 months, just about 12 months, Colleen, focused on non-COVID. And as you mentioned at the beginning, we've been really busy sort of working with communities since 2012, actually, when we went up to Burns Lake to work with the Burns Lake community and the Indigenous communities, and after the mill explosion, and we really felt we needed to help the area overcome that loss and sort of go, talk about where can we go forward into, and then we went from there over to Alberta, and then we've been to a lot of different places. And the one common thing that we've always found whenever we've gone into a community, whether it's here or the Virgin Islands or Cambodia, Colleen, it's the same thing. Is communities are not really prepared to rebuild an economy after a disaster. We focus on rebuilding infrastructure or getting people in safe or out safe, but we don't focus on the economy part of it. And we need the economy to help support our communities. So, we really encourage communities to, work with others, create that team, and plan. Create that plan for the economy, for repairing the economy after a shock or an impact that might happen. And it's not even if it's might, it's when it will happen. And again, I think in the last 12 months, none of us would have predicted probably a COVID type of disaster, but we know that we're going to have a flood, or we're going to have snowstorms, or we're going to have other things that are going to impact things. Let's have a plan as to how we're going to rebuild that economy once that disaster is over.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more. Pre-planning is a must.
And that's all we have for today. I don't know how we got through it in 50 minutes this morning. I have no idea because we still rushed some of our stuff today. But as usual, that's who we are. So.
Awesome. You covered a lot of ground in that 60 minutes. So thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? You can unmute yourself, or any comments to what you heard in the last 60 minutes. We'd love to hear from you. Feel free also to use the chat box. I was really inspired by the story of the gentleman from Frog Lake Cree Nation. Talk about partnership, collaboration, and I really think some mentorship was happening in there too. So yeah, that's a good story. Jack is just saying thank you very much for this useful, much appreciated presentation. So little props for you. And I also noticed you showed my mayor. You had a video of my mayor, Don Iveson, and the partnership and collaboration with Chief Billy Morin. So that was really cool to see. I'm so proud.
That's good stuff. So you should be.
Yeah. All right. Well, if there's no comments, no questions, I just want to say thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Really good information and content. Thank you very much. We do want to give a shout out to Creator, a gift of another day that we have an opportunity to sit here on Zoom We're miles and miles apart from each other, but we can still learn from one another. So we give thanks for the gift of this moment, this opportunity, that we are students for life. We're constantly growing and collaborating, you know, as individuals and as partners. So thank you for sharing what you know. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. Be safe, be warm, and drink water. It's like
How about coffee? There we go. Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.